Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We are joined today by Andy Morgan. Andy once flew all the way from Japan to Edmonton, Canada, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, Edmonton is not a very glamorous place to fly to. And we are graced by his presence here today.
Thank you for having me on, Daniel. I appreciate it. I did. It was fun, though. It was totally worth it. It was a quick dash into, I think it was Tokyo to Calgary, short hop to Edmonton. I got to see the beautiful Holiday Inn that was kind of halfway between the airport and the town. And then I immediately went straight back and had to jump on another flight back because I had something in Bangkok. I had a conference in Bangkok. So, yeah, that's like really far. That's past Japan again. That actually really messed me up time zone wise. However, it was fun as hell. And I'm really happy that I went.
I'm happy as well that you went. We got to meet and lots of good stuff that was at that conference. And once again, as I've done so many times, but shout out to Andrew Coates for connecting us and for hosting that conference. But go ahead.
Fun fact. So there's something. There's a team called the Oilers,
Edmonton's
right?
hockey
And
team.
so
Yeah.
I assume everyone listening to this just knows, right? So I got no idea. And in the bar at the hotel. This is before the conference. I think I was a little early. There's a bunch of people sitting around drinking pints, watching hockey. I think, yeah, hockey, yeah. And I said, "So what's the Oilers?" Like, people turned around and they gave me like the dirtiest look. They were just like, "What? Who is this guy? Where did this alien just like teleport in from?" Yeah, and then I found out it's like religion.
It's probably similar reaction is if you went around calling football soccer in England.
Yeah. With that accent. But well, no, with that accent, you're fine. If you call it soccer with my accent, then you get some very odd looks. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like you should know better, right? I'll get a pass because like, this guy doesn't know about anything. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about training. We've got a lot to get to today, not all the time in the world. We were not planning to talk about this, but you recently injured yourself in an unfortunate accident. Tell us about the injury and tell us about your plans around your training and what you're going to do to help yourself get better. Because while the specific injury may not be relevant to anyone listening, injuries in general and little minor setbacks are always relevant.
Sure. So I appreciate that people are here for the training and the nutrition tips regarding mainly physique change today, and we are going to dig into that. I just want to give you a quick cycling tip. And that cycling tip is, do not put your left leg through your front wheel. Yeah, it's like, classic meme, man with a stick. He puts the stick through his front wheel and immediately flips over. So I did that. I had a helmet on. It's a road bike, race bike, and yeah, just immediately flipped forward. Basically, my foot wasn't properly clipped in. My left foot wasn't properly clipped into the pedals. As you don't push down, you push kind of forward and down to put the power in. And I did that as I was going up a hill. And yeah, I lost my balance because my foot slipped forward. It went through the front wheel. And just flipped over, bam, straight on my shoulder and elbow. Broke my radius up by the elbow and tore 3 ligaments in my shoulder. So this was 3.5 weeks ago now. The surgery was a week and a half ago. And it's going to be a bit of a road to recovery. So kind of sucked. I got great care though. And now it's just a case of, okay, how are we going to manage this best?
Right. So what's step one now with your care team as far as getting back into, just normal everyday activity, pain-free, all that stuff?
Yeah, avoiding pain is the big one. So trying to have as much movement as possible to the point where you have like, I don't know, a 2 or 3 out of 10 for pain, right? So trying to encourage movement, doing my rehab exercises as they are prescribed, but not leaning into the pain. There's a balance that needs to be had. And now that I'm feeling okay, so it's been 3.5 weeks, but effectively I was reset to 0 again after the surgery, right? So I'm a week and a half out. So I managed to get one training session in the day before the surgery. And what I did on that training session was my legs. It had to be machine based. So it was leg press, leg extensions, leg curls. And then I did a single arm horizontal push, horizontal pull. So that's a machine chest press and a seated cable row, and a vertical press and a vertical pull. So that would be a single arm lat pull down and it was a machine shoulder press. And I just did that for 3 sets of 8 to 12, somewhere around that. I'm taking it as close to failure as I normally would for all of those exercises, except for the shoulder exercise, which I found it pissed off my injury. So I just went quite light there, and so I purposefully kept a few reps from failure. The point of this is to keep training as much as possible, and that is going to be my plan from this Friday after I've got the metal, the stitches, and I think there's
staples.
There's some stuff I've got on my shoulder that needs to be removed. That's a bit, a bit uncomfortable, and from then I'll go to the gym and I'll do that. That will be the plan. And we know that there is a transference effect. I don't think that is the technical name. It's very similar to that. If you Google that, it will come up. There is a transference effect for both strength and maintaining muscle mass. It's not perfect, but it's much, much better than not doing anything. And really, for our clients, we need to help them navigate their way around injuries, because when you work with enough people just occasionally get injured. Funnily enough, it's very rare in the gym for people to get injured. It's usually just in life, right? Picking up a big bag of dog food, for example, just something silly, right? So we need to help them with this
that's
stuff.
too specific of an example for you to have just made that up off the top of your head.
It was just made up. I'm sorry. Yeah, but
that's impressive.
My friend's dog just passed, and so dog is top of the mind. Yeah, I got that message just before. Anyway, it's usually just something silly, and the advice that we give is, okay, do your best to train around pain. This is not an all or nothing situation. If nutrition's 50 and training is 50, obviously you can't really split it like that, but let's say it's 50-50. Okay, you can still look after your nutrition. Wonderful. Now you've got 50% less, and this is your training. Okay, how much of your training can you still do? Well, unless it's a lower back injury that's also permeating pain and preventing you from doing anything, even with machine exercises for both upper body and lower body, well, then you can probably still train like 3/4 of your body, as long as you've got access to machines or you get creative, right? Or almost no matter what. Obviously not on the days post-surgery or ever, or if you're still in acute pain, but when you're feeling well enough to get back to it, there's a lot that you can do. And the other thing that we encourage people to remember is that you'll get your muscle and strength back fairly quickly after any kind of injury or just layoff from the gym. Muscle regain happens much more quickly than new muscle growth. So that's also something to bear in mind. So really, it's a case of, okay, helping them get through that mourning process as quickly as possible and getting into the practical, okay, what's next? Helping them see that this isn't an all or nothing situation and there's a lot that we still can do. And then helping them also see that it really isn't going to be that bad net when you look, say, a month or two post-injury, obviously depending on how long things go on for. And then regarding the specifics of troubleshooting, this is a quick framework for that we run people through that I could cover if you want, but okay. So it's a case of, okay, so let's say you're having a bit of pain when you're doing an exercise. So it could be an acute injury or it could be like chronic injury. So let's take the case of chronic injury because this is more easier to picture. You find that your elbows on the inside start to be cranky. You've realized that the exercise that is pissing this off seems to be the chin-ups, specifically where you've got your palms facing you. If you avoid the chin-ups, but you do everything else in your program, then things are fine, right? So you got to try and isolate what it is that's upsetting things. And you're like, oh, okay, so it says chin-ups. So what would you do there? Okay, well, perhaps change your grip position. Does that work? So same range of motion, same load, just try changing the grip position or the angle of motion slightly. This doesn't apply to chin-ups, but it could apply to, say, shoulder presses, for example. You change the angle of the bench. Can you still train with that full range of motion, same load, slightly changed foot position, arm position, range of motion, could be range of motion as well, so that you can still train the target muscles without any pain? If yes, great, happy days, do that. If you're not a powerlifter, someone who competes, then you can, you're not tied down to any specific exercise that you have to do. You can always find another exercise that is a similar movement pattern or targets the same muscles. So let's say that bench press pisses your shoulder off. Okay, no worries. Dumbbell bench press. Boom. Swapping barbell for dumbbell bench press, right? Or let's say it's just flat pressing generally that pisses your shoulder off. Does a slight incline work for you? Perhaps there's something just with the free weights you can't quite figure out. Okay, can you do machines? Perhaps you get pain in your shoulder when you come too low. Okay, well, could you put a block on your chest so that you're stopping the bar from getting to full competition or proper depth, right? So that you don't have that pain. I mean, you're still training and getting a really good training effect, even if the range of motion is a couple of inches shorter than what would be quote unquote ideal, right? So just helping people really to work around these things.
It's always, I think that when I explain the same sort of concept to people, they're like, oh, it sounds so simple when you say it like that. But it's like no one really thinks of that. It's like, oh, well, my shoulder hurts, so just like no upper body for 2 months. When many of those things that you just mentioned, like, will fix the problem, unless it's like a serious, like what you have is a real injury. If we're talking like, oh, my elbow kind of doesn't feel that great, it's a little bit of a tweak. Very often, changing the grip, changing the angle, changing the range of motion, changing, some small variable will fix the issue. And again, to your point, we have to kind of lose this marriage to specific exercises or being to like, I'm pretty anal about good form and doing things right and all that kind of stuff. But you don't always have to squat ass to grass if it's causing you pain. Like, that's not the point of doing an exercise properly, as an example. And so that's the time when it's like, yeah, well, if you can go halfway, then great. And we'll work on expanding that range as your pain lessens. And so just being open, I think, to new ways of doing things is really maybe the best way to do it. But to be fair, difficult to do if you've not had too much experience trying different grips. And like, you've only ever done chin-ups this way. Doing chin-ups this way sounds really easy when Andy says it, but it's like, if you've never done that, it's not even in your world, right? So hard to kind of pick those things up.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And then so I think just being observant when you go into the gym, seeing what other people do, and just having an open mind to it. Sure, you're going to see some stuff that is kind of pretty poor, and you'll pick up over time, like what that person's doing is less than optimal, right? But you'll also pick up like some interesting ideas for how to do things in a different way, and those, bank them, pop them in your mind, because you can draw on those at certain points when you need.
And I'd say on that one specifically, look to the older guys in the gym for that, because like the 22-year-old kid who's just doing some weird looking stuff, he's probably just doing weird looking stuff. The 65-year-old guy who's doing something weird is possibly or more likely because his shoulder hurts, and that weird way that he figured out how to do whatever exercise is because that makes his shoulder not hurt and him able to do that. Like, that just kind of comes with years of experience, right?
Yeah, and if you want to be super proactive about this, you could walk over and say, hey man, look, just trying to learn here. I noticed that you're doing this exercise in that specific way. Is there a reason for that? Like working around an injury or something? Interesting. You might even make a friend, right? Right. As well as learn
imagine
something,
that.
right? Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, I don't know how gyms are where you are, but it seems here now in Toronto, anyways, that like that kind of like making buddies at the gym and people just like becoming friends is so much less now than it was in pre-COVID times. And God, like that's really the breaking point of this, where it would have felt normal to go up to someone and like they wouldn't get upset at you. But now it's like everyone's just headphones on, head down, no one wants to talk, and God forbid you do talk to someone, it's like a problem. It's we'll get sidetracked with that, but gym culture seems to have taken a downturn.
Okay, I think most of the problem is in our own heads with this. So yes, we are all. So you are correct. Everyone has their headphones on, so therefore it makes it much more difficult to start a casual conversation with someone. And if you don't have anything to say, like you're not going to just do the weather conversation, right? And tap someone on the shoulder to get them to take the headphones off. So having a start in is more difficult. But I don't know about you, like I'm still up for conversation as long as someone's not like doing it in the middle of like some nasty leg press, right? So I'm still totally open to it. It's just, I think that's just my thoughts. I think people are more open than they look. It's just they appear unopen.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty fair comparison. But anyways, we don't have to spend too much time on that. Sure. Will there be anything that you will do vastly different nutritionally to help with your recovery? Will you be in sort of a maintenance phase? Are you going to do anything very specific, or more or less the same as what you normally do?
Yeah, I'm no longer in a calorie deficit. I was in a slight calorie deficit before, so I was trying to lean out to make me lighter for the mountains. So I like to cycle. It's just a hobby. Mm-hmm. I'm back at maintenance now. Practically, what did that mean in terms of changing my diet? Actually, I didn't really need to change anything because my activity levels have come lower, and therefore the same rough calorie intake is about maintenance. And I'm just judging that by jumping on the scale every morning and just seeing what that trend is over time. And currently there's no change in the trend. So I'm good.
You bring up a good little myth there about calculating calories burned from exercise. And, if your watch says you burned 757 calories from your whatever type of workout you did, how accurate is that?
You want me to answer? Yeah. Not very, unless. So very specific to cycling or sports that have a power meter. So they're measuring actually the power that you're putting. So with cycling, you can get your pedals or your crank to have a power meter on them that measures the power that you're actually putting into the crank. So that actually can get very accurate, because then it's just math from there, and that can actually get very accurate readouts. But the difference between that and, say, a running estimation is, okay, well, how much do you weigh? How long did you go? How experienced of a runner are you? How efficient are your ligament, tendon, muscle insertions for propelling you forward? What footwear were you wearing? What was the elevation or not, right, for the run? Like all of these other things factor in. And so there's research on this, but most of these activity trackers, they're a distraction rather than something to reactively adjust your nutrition on. So I recommend to clients, by all means, use them to log your workouts in Strava or whatever, if you'd like to, your cardio workouts. But please do not adjust your nutrition based on them. Right? We have one calculation at the start, which is, okay, what's your activity levels? Okay, what a few other things we come up with a calorie estimation. And then we keep that consistent. We see how the rate of weight change is. If that is on target, great, we don't change things. If it's not, then we adjust from that baseline. Because unless cardio levels are changing significantly, then there's no need to adjust anything. It doesn't matter that one day your watch or phone or whatever it is estimates that you have burned 300 calories more than you did the day before. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what's happening on average over time. If you try to adjust your daily intake to what your watch or phone suggested that you burned, you're going to end up on a food hunt each day So not only is it not accurate and it's going to lead you astray, and the tendency is towards overestimation, but you're going to be on a food hunt every day. And this is going to undermine building all of the habits that you need to learn and set and ingrain so that what we're doing becomes second nature, so that you can sustain it over the long term to achieve and keep the physical transformation that you're after.
It's almost as if reality is the thing that matters and not technology. And so it's like, hey, if your calculation is working, then and it's mathematically incorrect by somehow, well, it's working. So like, fix it. Like the example that I've used is extreme just to paint the picture. If you somehow measure your calories and you measure it you're eating 5,000 calories a day and you're losing about a pound a week, well, like, it's wrong that you're probably not eating 5,000 calories a day and losing a pound a week, but like whatever you're doing is working. So at some point, kind of keep doing it. Now we do want to get that accurate. That's maybe too extreme of an example to make this real, but if it's working and sustainable / you're able to do it for the period of time you intend to do it for, let it rip. If your calculation is wrong and it's not working, well, then you've got different problems in your hands.
Yeah. The more common example is kind of the one where I'm only eating 1,000 calories a day, but I'm not losing weight. It's like, well, you're probably not eating just 1,000 calories a day, but let's say you have been. What's your trend in your weight recently? Is it just the past 2 weeks it's held on to the same level? If so, you're probably just holding on to water and you're about to have it whoosh off. So if your trend in weight was a fairly steady line down when you're looking at the averages over the weeks, and then all of a sudden it plateaus, but your activity levels haven't changed and your nutrition hasn't changed, well, then it has to be water, gut content, and glycogen masking the fat loss. That's all it can possibly be. It's just calorie math, right? Your metabolism doesn't suddenly adapt, right? That's a very, very gradual process. And so that you just need to wait in that case. But this person who thinks that they're eating 1,000 calories and let's say they were losing, I don't know, a pound of weight per week, half kilo a week, right? The only cases where that's true, if you are a petite, let's say this another way, if you are a lighter, shorter, a short, light person with low activity levels, yes. Yeah, there we go. Right. And that in that case, it just kind of sucks because you don't really burn that much. And yeah, but otherwise, for most other people, no, you're actually eating far more than you think. But that doesn't have to be an issue as long as you just adjust relative to that baseline. But the last thing you want to do there is go onto the internet and just type into Reddit, I'm eating 800 calories a day, but I'm not losing weight. What's wrong with me? Right. And then you'll get, right. People will just lose their minds. It's like, you've got metabolic damage, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, no.
Like many places on the internet, Reddit is certainly one of those where it's a great source of information if you already have a good base of knowledge on the topic that you're looking for. But if you don't know anything about the thing and you just go to a Reddit thread, you are almost guaranteed to just be inundated by mostly garbage and probably end up more confused than you were when you started.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. You mentioned like a whoosh, and this is kind of, segueing a little bit, but not necessarily talking about whooshes, but like aggressive cuts and maybe less aggressive cuts. I think it's a very popular thing to talk about sustainable fat loss, although fat loss is not necessarily supposed to be sustainable in that you shouldn't be losing weight for forever. You lose weight and then you want to eventually maintain that weight conceivably for the foreseeable future. I don't know if it's something you would use maybe after your like once you're fully healed and all back and just to kind of like kickstart things, but like when would you use a more aggressive fat loss approach versus like, and let's kind of define aggressive as something around like 2 pounds, 1 kilo per week versus like the more standard kind of half a pound to 1 pound, half kilo a week.
Let's also put some further parameters around that. So let's say more than 1% of weight loss per week. So if you're 200 pounds, that would be £2. If you're 150 pounds, that would be more than 1.5 pounds, 100 pounds pound. Just, so it's relative to body size.
Mm-hmm.
So when would I suggest that? Never. Pretty much. Now, what is important here, and I assume you will have mentioned this in an intro that you recorded before we click record, but perhaps not. Are you going to be doing an intro?
No, I won't do an intro.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, shit. Okay, well, hello. My name's Andy. I'm British, but I live in Japan. I've been here for 20 years. I came over originally because I thought I would do karate and teach English for a year and then go home and figure out my life, because I didn't know what I wanted to do upon graduation. But I ended up staying because I loved it. About 7 years in, I started blogging. I started writing about fitness topics because I was super, super duper upset by the amount of BS that's in the industry. And I was watching my Japanese friends get absolutely raped by the supplement industry because there was so much nonsense out here, and they were taking every pill, powder, potion under the sun. It was a super hardcore bodybuilding gym, and it was in a really poor area, and that irked me. So I would write in English, have those blog posts translated into Japanese because I wanted to help. And we've continued to do that for the last 14 years. So we've now got two businesses. One's called ripbody.com, the main business there is online coaching. The other one is athletebody.jp. Main business there as well is online coaching. But we also we do book translations, my own the Muscle and Strength Pyramid books, also Mark Ripto's Starting Strength. We've also just localized Macro Factor, which is a nutrition logging app, which I'm sure many people will be familiar with. We're the Japanese partners for that because I've been friends with Greg and Lindsay for many, many years now. They're the Macro Factor team. For the ripbody.com website, this is English-facing website, mostly North Americans. It's all men. This is who we specialize in. And it's pretty much busy family men who were once in shape, and they're probably, in their 40s, late 30s, 40s, some in their 50s, and they're trying to get that back. Time has gradually pulled them out of shape, but they want to get that back. They're not new to the fitness industry. They know the industry is riddled with charlatans and people who just want to take their money and really don't care. And they want to get it back. They want to sustain it. And their motivations are not just now, the motivations are not just vanity, right? It's no longer about having abs because they think that's going to help them get the girl, right? They understand at this point that isn't the case. All right, what matters is the content of your character, literally, and are you able to have a conversation? Are you a good human, right? But the fact that you are fit is just a bonus on that, right? But these people, they want to be fit. They want to have confidence in their skin. They want to set a good example for their kids, and they want to be that sexy husband for their wives. Not that many people admit that, but a few do, right? This is our demographic there. On the Japanese side of things, it's the bodybuilders.
Who doesn't want to be a trophy dad? Come on.
Right?
Everyone wants to be a trophy dad. Come on.
Japanese side, it's bodybuilders. So with that context, now we can answer the question. So for the bodybuilders, if they have if we are not on track for some reason, then we will start off with a more aggressive deficit, because the fatter you are, the faster you can go, more aggressively you can lose fat, and without losing any muscle. And so it makes sense to start the diet, if we've calculated out and they're not going to get to their stage shredded leanness in time, more aggressive. However, these are bodybuilders. Adherence is not an issue, generally. These guys are hardcore as F,
You
right?
can swear.
Well, the people might have people in the car, so I don't want to do it. But little people in the car who shouldn't be hearing these things. So, we don't have to worry about them being able to adhere, because their life revolves around this for the most part when they're in competition season. But for the Rip Body, we work with regular people. And if someone wants to rush to get in shape, we're not interested in them. I'm the one who vets all the clients. There's 3 of us who do the coaching. I'm not interested in working with them, because what that's going to do is set up a repeat pattern of behaviors that's the reason that they are coming to us in the first place. What they're trying to do is basically the same as they've done before, but this time they're going to have a coach in their corner as well. Well, no. You do the same as before and have a coach in your corner, you're going to lead to ultimately probably the same outcome, because while we can give you accountability, if you don't learn the habits that you need and set things up in a way that you can sustain, it is going to fall apart at some point. So essentially, I insist always that people we set things up in a way that they will be able to sustain, so that we will not only get to where they want to go, but we will then be able to exceed that and then take it to the next level afterwards. So the average, our minimum is 3 months. The average client stays on for about 10.5 months. And of course, what that means is that there's a split between people who they only stay for a few months, and then those who are very long term, like 2 years plus, is very, very common. And why are they there at 2 years plus? It's because they've leaned out and lost all the fat they had to lose. And then we've gone through a bulking phase, a cutting phase, and maybe into the next bulking phase, which I know is something that you want to talk about. But if we take on people who are looking for these short-term fixes, then we just don't get and when we advertise that, then we don't get these longer-term clients who are the people that we frankly enjoy working with. They're better to work with. So it's also a business decision as well, and kind of my bias is in that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the most important thing to highlight there for people listening that you mentioned is that the big factor here, aside from some psychological factors and stuff, is just the adherence. Like regular people who are not bodybuilders or like super hardcore for some reason, is like, if you want to do a really hard, really aggressive cut, you have to be like, being 70% on your game doesn't cut it. And you're just going to be like kind of quote unquote suffering, and also not getting the results that you are setting yourself up to want to get. And so it's just not going to work. It's like, I've kind of discouraged people by saying like, okay, you can do this, but these are all the things you have to do. And I need you to be like 100% on point. Can you do that for 6 weeks in a row? Man, I'm not sure. I might, have this party coming up. It's like, okay, great. Then we're not doing it, because it's just not going to work. You're setting yourself up for disappointment here. So the adherence piece is a really, really big, important part of that. So before anyone listening to this is like, September, and now we want to get off the summer, the August barbecues and stuff, like, really ask yourself whether you can truly, truly stick to it 100% before you start doing something more aggressive than you need to. And then think about the long-term consequences as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bulking and cutting, you just mentioned that.
Sure.
How should we think of it? I think that the whole bulking thing has been taken way too far. And actually, to your point here earlier about the bodybuilding, is probably something that's really more taken from bodybuilding, and when adapted to regular people gets kind of bastardized in a way that is counterproductive or less productive than it should be. But what are your thoughts on it? Of course, you take people through this, but how do you set them up?
Sure. For someone who is new to the gym, or they've been going to the gym, but they're fairly new to proper training. So for someone who is, say, sub 1 year proper training experience, you don't really need, this is a bit of a hot take, but you don't really need to concern yourself with cutting or bulking phases. If your diet is obviously shit in certain areas, sorry kids in the back of the car, then cleaning up those elements of your diet is probably going to help. And when I say obviously shit, I'm not talking about being pedantic here and making life absolutely miserable. What I'm saying here is, if you come home and have a long pour of whiskey, right, and you do that every night, right, or you have a dessert with every meal, right, and your problem is that you carry too much body fat, right? If you can knock those things out or reduce them significantly, perhaps once or twice a week, that's going to make a massive difference. This is what I mean. What I don't mean by this is cleaning up your diet and then only eating vegetables and chicken and quote unquote clean foods, right? Just as a caveat there. So if you just go and train, what will happen is usually your appetite will start to regulate a bit better. You will put on muscle. You will lose fat. Just all of these changes will take place. You'll gain muscle, lose fat over many, many months. And then you will get to a point where things stall. And then when they stall, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you're going to be like, right, okay, what do I need to do now? So let's run through a checklist of what I need to do now. So we're still not thinking about cutting and bulking. It's just, okay, what are the big rocks that we can look after here? And let's leave those pebbles and fine grains of sand out. What are the pebbles? Pebbles might be nutrient timing, like, oh, should I have a pre-workout something or a post-workout something? No. That doesn't matter here for the moment. Think of the nutrition pyramid of importance with calories on the bottom, then your macronutrients as the next layer of importance. Your micronutrients, vegetables, etc. This is kind of the middle layer. Nutrient timing kind of comes a little bit higher up, and then supplements least important on top there. Okay, so calories, macronutrients. So put aside nutrient timing, big rocks. What's the next thing? Okay, are you eating a sufficient amount of protein? Because you may not be. Look into that. If you haven't been, consider bumping that up a little. You'll probably see that you are more satiated, so less hunger. You therefore manage to eat fewer calories overall and continue to lose fat without actively tracking all of your calories. Wonderful, happy days, keep doing that. Next time you stall, okay, what is it? What's the big obvious thing that you need to change? Well, how's your sleep? Are you sleeping poorly? How's your stress levels? Is there any way that you can manage that a little bit better? How about your training? Like when you started out training twice a week, great. Maybe you need to do 3 now. Or if you've been doing 3, could you increase that to 4? Do you have that time in your schedule, for example? And then what people tend to do is they tend to make all of these obvious changes, which aren't obviously obvious at the time. I'm using the word obvious a bit too much here. But they make these changes and then they get to a point where they're now stuck. And then what happens is people will jump and try to do different things, like they'll change up their training program completely. They'll do like a 5-3-1. They'll do Jeff Nippard's like power building split. They'll do not that there's anything wrong with any of these things that I'm saying, right? They might try our muscle and strength pyramid programs. And what they will miss is the fact that the problem wasn't their training and the problem is no longer their diet. The problem is that they are no longer fat. They have pushed the training as far as they can go and gained as much muscle as is possible for their current level of body fat. What I mean there is, okay, so they've leaned out. They don't really have that much fat left to lose in many cases. And they've been training for quite a while. And so this recomping effect where they gain muscle and lose fat at the same time just isn't happening anymore. And it's at this point that they need to make a choice. Do I continue to lean out or do I go into a gaining phase? Because trying anything else is just going to lead them into a pattern of continuing to spin their wheels. And many people, they get themselves into this wheel spinning for a long time, in some cases many years. In fact, you'll look at most people probably in the gym. If you've been going there for a few years, you look around, and if you could remember, which, you know, your memory isn't going to be accurate in this case, but most people will look the same today as they did 2 years ago, unfortunately, for those longer term members. And that is because they've reached that point where they now need to make a choice between the active cutting and bulking, and they struggle with it, or they don't follow through either of these phases for long enough. So like, I want to do a bulking phase. They try it. Oh, I'm getting too fat now. I need to cut, but they never cut for long enough to make the next bulking phase able to bulk for long enough so that they can make enough of a difference, so that they can bulk for long enough, gain enough muscle and make enough of a difference to the physique. So that by the time they've cut down again, they can actually see a level change in their physique. This is kind of where the cutting, bulking situation comes in. And this tends to be the demographic that we work with, those people who are already stuck. They're unsure about what to do, or they know what to do, but they're like, man, this is a bit scary. Can you just guide me through it? Because I've seen you guys guide so many people through it before. Yeah.
This is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because I knew you would be able to explain this like so eloquently. And not just because you have a British accent, but because you really explain it super well. Back to the adherence connection to this, it's almost as if people are not seeing the process all the way through. The more progress you make, the harder it gets to make the next bit of progress. And so when things slow down, we see people jump into the next thing a little bit too quickly, or when things change. So they start a little bit of a bulk. They start to feel that first little bit of extra fluff that's on them from the bulk. And it's like, oh, no, this is not good. This is not what I want. And then switch it when they haven't seen that process through to get to a point where it's like, okay, now you've completed this process with an acceptable amount of body fat gain, but also the intended amount of muscle gain. And then you can start the next step. So this is, why coaching is so valuable, because you have someone to kind of, like you said, guide you through that, to say that, hey, this is the process. These are the things that are going to happen. So anticipate these things to happen. And this is the defined end of this process, in which case, here is the next step. And we'll solve the issues that this one kind of created, so to speak.
Yeah, if we can dig into the psychology of this a little bit more. I know we said top of the hour regarding timing, but I'm happy to go 15 minutes over. I'll still
as much
have
time
enough
as you've
time
got.
to get. Great. So we'll say 15 minutes over. So to describe the feelings that people go through a bit more, just so that you know what to anticipate. People get themselves in a position where they don't feel lean enough to bulk. And they don't feel big enough to cut. But if they keep their body weight the same, they're not seeing any muscle gain and fat loss anymore. So what do? I call this physique purgatory. It's very common. And unfortunately, if you have looked after the big rocks, so your training intensity is there, your training frequency is there, right? You're covering all of the main 6 movement patterns that you should be. The squat, the hip hinge, the upper body push-pull, vertically and horizontally, right? You're eating enough protein. You are sleeping enough. You are managing stress as best you can. Then, well, the only thing that you can now change is your nutrition strategy. And what that means is you've got to embrace the suck. So there are 3 ways to embrace the suck here. There's the suck of going to the gym and just staying the same. There's the suck of getting a bit fat for a while, temporarily, or rather gaining more fat than you would ideally like for a temporary period, with the greater goal of putting on a step change level of muscle mass, knowing that you will lean down again and cut it off again, but being uncomfortable with yourself and being in your skin once again in many cases, right? Or leaning out to a point where you feel painfully lean and skinny. And that happens for everyone. And unfortunately, and you have to do one of these 3. Most people's default is to just stay the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can. But if you want to make a change, then you've got to face the reality. And you've got to embrace the suck at one of those points. And for most people, I suggest usually it's lean out to a point where you're uncomfortably lean and then bulk from there. Because you want to be lean enough where you could bulk for 10 months. So you've got a good shot at gaining like maybe 0.5% of your body weight as muscle per month, maybe 0.75 of your body weight as muscle per month. So that then when you cut down again, ideally you'll lose no muscle in that cutting phase after, that 3-month-ish cutting phase after. You have now really made a big difference to your physique. The issue that people have is that they don't cut for long enough. They stop when they start to feel skinny. oh, I've got to bulk again. Then they bulk and they bulk for 3 months. And it's like, oh, shit, now I feel fat again. And they never really get anything done. Maybe they're gaining 1 or 2 pounds of muscle, but that's not enough to make a meaningful difference to their physique. Mm-hmm. So now let's put some numbers on this. Let's say that you are a 6-foot guy who was 220 pounds at one point. You've cut down to 190. You've got it in your head that you should be 210 pounds and shredded lean, because this is what all the magazines tell you. You've gone from 220 to 190, and you thought at 200 you would have your abs, but you haven't. And now you're like, shit. Reality has really just started to kick you in the ass. You're like, fuck, I'm sorry, kids in the back of the car. I have far less muscle than I thought I had. It's like, yeah, welcome to the club. We've all been there. Sorry. I know it sucks. Welcome. Join us, friend. Open the door. There you go. Right. Have a hot towel. Wipe your face down. Okay. Now it's going to get tough. So they hover around the 190 and it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? And they're flipped between bulking, cutting. It's like, okay, this person may well have to get down to 170. Okay. Really psychological tough. Because now also people around them are like, is everything okay, Daniel? Like, you're looking a bit, like, are you got any health issues, or just looking a bit skinny? Because everyone knows that Daniel goes to the gym, right? Because, he goes to the gym, right? He talks about it from time to time. He's not like a CrossFitter, right, who talks about it all the time, or a High Rocks person, but he still talks about that he goes to the gym, right? Sometimes he's seen with a protein shaker in his car. Anyway, so you've got to fight all of that and be really confident in what you're doing to be able to get to the point where you're lean enough and follow through to the point where you're lean enough. Right? You've got to be really confident, because otherwise your own internal voice plus all the external voices will just stop you from getting there. But let's say you do manage to do that. Great. Now, what you're going to do over the next 10 months, you're going to gain probably 25 pounds. 3 to 5 pounds will be immediate water, gut content, and glycogen gain. Bam, you'll gain that back in the first week and a half. That's not fat. That's not muscle. That's water, gut content, and glycogen. Okay. This is because you're now eating more calories, so you got more food in your pipes. Right, you're eating more carbohydrates as well, so now you've got more something called glycogen, which is those carbs stored with water in your muscles and your liver. Right, you're going to feel fuller, you're going to look bigger, but the scale's going to tell you that you got bigger, and then bigger for most people when they've been in a dieting phase means fatter, but no, it's actually not. That isn't connected now. Okay, make sure you're taking your stomach measurements as well, ideally in 3 places: at the navel, 3 fingers above, 3 fingers below. So then you can see and prove to yourself that actually it wasn't sudden fat regain. Then you're going to gain weight steadily, 2 pounds a month over the next, I'm just using arbitrary figures here, but it's fairly common. 2 pounds a month over the next, for the next 10 months, and you gain 20 pounds. With any luck, 8 to 10 pounds of that will be muscle. And you'll then cut down again and be 180 pounds, 178 to 180 pounds by the time you've done that bulk and then that cut. And then when you come back to maintenance, you'll immediately gain that 3 to 5 pounds. So you'll settle at about 183 to 185 pounds. Now, where this goes wrong for people is that they've cut down to a point that was really uncomfortable, and they think they've made all of the sacrifices necessary. And then they've bulked up 25 pounds. And so now they've gone from 170 to 195. And they're like, wow, yeah, hell yeah. And they think they're going to cut down and be about 188. But no, they end up having to cut down to about 178, which is scary, forgetting that they're going to gain back that 5 pounds of water, gut content, and glycogen, right? So there's just these absolute landmines, mental landmines everywhere all over this cutting bulking landscape, that if you don't know what you're looking for and what is normal, that plus like these external comments that you can potentially get that can derail you if you're not super confident in what you're doing, it's no wonder that people just aren't able to do this. Not everyone, obviously. The bodybuilders have nailed it. But that's mainly because the bodybuilders are around other bodybuilders and they're just copying what the other bodybuilders are doing and not questioning it. And so they're super confident in what they're doing and they don't let it, rock their confidence and derail them, right? But most people don't have that. And this is what happens. And that's why most people look the same as they did 6 months ago.
Very well put. You got to really stick the process through. And I think that almost nobody, save the bodybuilders, are immune to this, including, I'll say, myself and many other trainer friends that I know as well. I don't know what yourself specifically, Andy, but like for me, if I want to be like super shredded and lean down as much as I, would want to be like really shredded, I'm not a very big guy. I'm about 5'6". I'm about 165-ish pounds right now. Like I'd have to be under 150. And for what it's worth, like those landmark kind of numbers also play a role into this psychology of things. Like probably under 200. If you're a guy who's a bigger guy, you're over 200 pounds, you probably don't want to ever be under 200 because it's like, are you even a real man if you're under 200 pounds? It's victim weight, exactly. as the kids say. So, so things like that, you pick these numbers in your head that like, I can't get, below 175 is too small. Below 150 is like a little boy. It's like, well, that's going to limit you from getting as lean as you like. So besides the tactics of these things, maybe the most important takeaway for anyone listening to this is know that you're not the only one who thinks that. And it's okay to think those things and all that. But you also, like, if you want to get big and strong and lean and jacked, like, you got to get over that.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're not prepared to do is usually the thing that's holding you back.
Exactly. We are going to be limited on time here, so I don't want to get into a whole other thing. Is there anything else that you want to say on the bulk and cutting thing? And maybe one quick thing is, where would you? Sorry, just to I went back on myself here, but if you are someone who's like kind of gone through the recomp and you're relatively lean, how would you know? Like, why would you tell that person to get leaner first rather than to bulk up? Is it just the mechanics of giving yourself a longer runway to gain more fat, or is there something to the being a little bit more lean first, where you'd start that cut before you go into a bulk?
I mean, the runway can be as long as you are open to it being. The thing that stops people is their own mental hang-up about now having gained, quote unquote, too much fat. And yes, there are certain health consequences of that. But as it's temporary and as it's controlled, I'm not a doctor, so I'll put that out as a caveat, but most people aren't going to be bulking to the point where it's causing any long-term health issue to themselves, right? So really it's just knowing human nature is that the vast majority of people stop themselves before they've had long enough bulking. So I encourage them to cut further.
Yeah, makes sense. And maybe
so
what
that
I was
they have
getting at
that,
there is, is it just the psychology of it, or is there some physiological, mechanical reason for that? And it sounds like maybe there's something there, like nutrient partitioning and things like that. But if you're not, I mean, that's maybe going to be a little too advanced now for the time that we've got left for you. But yeah.
We thought so at one point that the leaner that you are, the better your nutrient partitioning is, meaning like the more of the nutrients that you're taking in are shuttled towards building muscle versus being stored as fat. But that doesn't seem to be the case based on more recent research. So those things, that idea of nutrient partitioning is still out there. And it's something I talked about, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago or something. But it doesn't seem to be a thing. So it's not something
and like
to
many
worry
things,
about.
Probably not super relevant to non-high level athletes or bodybuilders. Like, it maybe matters, but like such a small percentage compared to the rest of your regular life that it's like not really something you got to pay attention to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very good, sir. I will let you go. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we close this off?
I'd say, yeah. So first, thank you for listening. And second, if you enjoyed this, the thing that I want you to know is that I've spent the last 14 years like pouring my love and knowledge into the website. So that's rippedbody.com. And although there are some books for sale, and although you can hire us for coaching, it's like everything about what we do is on there for free. All of what I've been talking about is just up there, easily available in the menu, the nutrition calculators, everything. It's exactly what I would have wanted when I was a very confused and frustrated, in my case, 25-year-old. But obviously, like, the age is irrelevant here. And I've just been kind of writing to myself and the demographic that we work with. So if there is anything that we talked about that you want to go deeper on, please go to the website. And if you'd like all of this in a simple daily dose course, then there's a box to pop your email address into. I call it the Kickstart course. You'll get some free programs, a free nutrition book taking you through it, 15-day email course taking you through the common mistakes that people make with their nutrition and their training setup, just so that you're not overwhelmed with things that you think you need to do. Because what does our industry love doing, Daniel? It's overcomplicating things for people, right? Because when you overcomplicate, you make it sound really difficult. And then people are like, oh no, I need to take a supplement or hire this person or whatever. And in fact, most of the time, that's not the case. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do first. So it doesn't have to be difficult, and set things up in a way that you can sustain. And because the best physiques are the ones that were crafted through consistency over time. And lastly, on the supplement thing, because it is my hobby horse, there is not a single person that failed to achieve their physique goals because they weren't taking a supplement. And there isn't a single person who looks phenomenal because they did take a supplement. So the next time you're thinking of buying something, just bear that in mind, especially if it's pushing up towards an uncomfortable level of your budget constraint.
You mean to tell me that the guy who's 275 pounds and about 3% body fat isn't that way because of the testosterone booster and protein powder? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
He's definitely that way because of the testosterone booster, but it's called
not the one in the bottle.
All sorts of anabolic steroids. Yeah, no. It's definitely not the actual supplement that claims to boost testosterone. No.
Unfortunately. Well, 230 some odd episodes in, and we've still arrived at consistency and effort intelligently applied over time is the secret sauce, unfortunately. So sorry to burst the bubble, but that's just the way it is. Andy, thank you very much for being generous with your time. Rippedbody.com. Is there anywhere else you want to send people? Is your Instagram also Ripped Body, or is it Andy Morgan? I don't even remember.
It's Andy_Ripped Body. Yeah.
Best of both worlds. Andy_Ripped Body. I'll put all the links to everything in the show notes. Andy, again, thank you very much, everybody. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're checking everything out that Andy and Ripped Body has going on. Like, share, subscribe to the episode, and share with your friends, and all those good things helps get good messages out to more good people. And we very much appreciate it. Go outside. Be a good person. See you next time.